Hey, this is Mr. Sorensen, and today we're going to take a look at the design of our Craftsman Box project. So on the board behind me, we're going to take a few minutes and just draw that project out. A critical part of woodworking is the ability to design something. Designs start by making sketches, but then they end up in what's called a working drawing. And we are going to, over the course of the semester, draw 3 views of our box that we're building so that we have all the numbers, sizes, shapes, everything necessary to actually build that box. So today we're going to start by drawing the front view, and we'll just take a few minutes to draw it on the board behind me. All right, turn in your book to page 67 and you should find something that looks like this. You have basically a dot to dot. This shows you the starting points for the legs and the box front view. So I'm going to take the time to use my ruler. I'm going to put it on the board and I'm going to start to draw. And what you want to do is duplicate that inside your book. You're going to do the same thing you see me do. You're going to do this project with a ruler and a pencil. I'll do the same thing on the board. You do it in your blue book on page 67. I'm going to start by just using my ruler. I'm going to connect all the points. So there's my starting point. I'm just going to connect till I make 2 legs. I'm going to connect them with that straight line across the top, and then I'm ready to begin working on some more of the details. The legs on the Craftsman Box taper. They are bigger at the bottom and smaller at the top, which means I need to draw that same thing on my drawing. The legs are 1/8 of an inch bigger at the bottom, 1/8 of an inch smaller at the top. So on my ruler, 2 marks on a ruler are 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to start right here on this outside corner. I'm going to count in 1/8 of an inch, put a line. Then I'm going to take my ruler and turn it this way. I go from this little mark that I made down to this bottom corner. And I draw a line. There's my tapered line. My leg is 1/8 of an inch smaller at the top, and it gets bigger as it comes down to the bottom. Now I will do that same thing on the opposite side. So now the legs taper. They get smaller at the top. The next thing I'm going to do is, on my box, this top edge up here, the top edge is rounded just slightly. Radius the top of that leg. And the legs are done. I can take my eraser and come back and erase the parts I'm not using. You can do that on your paper. Any of the lines we don't need can be erased. So the next thing I need to do, the legs are done. The next thing I need to do is connect the legs with the front piece of the box. That's going to be done with a template. A template is a piece of wood that we've perfected. We've cut, drawn, sanded, and we have it perfectly like we want it. And then we can use this to duplicate as many curves as we need. We can make 100 boxes. All the curves will be exactly the same. So we're going to use a template in this case. I set the template right at the top line here, and I take my pencil and I draw a line right below the template. And there's the front of my box with the curve. When you do your box in your book on page 67, there are some templates at school in the classroom. They look like that. You'll put that on your paper on page 67 and draw your curve. All right, the next thing we need from this front view is we need to put in this little notch where the handle is going to sit. The notch is centered in the front of the box. So we're going to measure the front of the box. That's 8 inches. Half of 8 would be 4. So I'm going to measure over 4 inches on my drawing. And put a mark in the middle at 4 inches. And then my handle is 2 inches wide. So my notch needs to be 2 inches wide. To split that, to center that notch, if it's 2 inches wide, 1 inch would go on the left of the line, 1 inch would go on the right of the line. Like that. And there's my handle. The outside of the notch is now marked on the paper. The next thing that I need to know is how deep is the notch? How far down is the notch into the box? Well, the notch, the depth of the notch equals the thickness of the lid. So the lid is a 1/2 inch thick, right? There's the lid. The lid is made out of 1/2 inch stock. So I need a notch that's a 1/2 inch deep. So I'm going to measure down a 1/2 inch and put a mark here. Come over here, measure down a 1/2 inch, put a mark here, turn my ruler, and draw a line across. Now I can turn the ruler this way, bring that down, bring that down. There's my notch. Right, so essentially I have everything that can be seen from the front of a box on my drawing now. Now I need to start adding in some things that cannot be seen. So, for example, in our box, I can see the handle, I cannot see the lid, but that doesn't mean the lid is not there. In this box, there is a lid, right? It's just that from the front view, we don't see a lot of it. On a drawing, I can indicate that it's there by using what are called hidden lines. Hidden lines are dashed lines. Dashed lines means you can't see it from the front, but it is in there. It is behind the front. So go to a different view and look for it. The way I would do that is I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to go ahead and just connect this line here across. Then I'm going to come down here to the bottom of the notch and I extend my lines out almost to the leg. I'm not going to go all the way to the leg. I'm going to leave it a little short, but I'm going to extend my lines out so they get very close to the leg. And I'm going to extend those lines as dashed lines. All right, so that's how I start this process. Now I have a 1/2 inch piece sitting in the top of my box. I need to put an end on it. And to put an end on it, if we look at the actual box, what we notice is that there is a gap all the way around the lid. There's a gap all the way around the lid because wood expands and contracts with moisture in the air. So that means that on a foggy day, my lid could potentially get stuck in my box and it wouldn't open if I make the lid fit too closely into the box. If I make it really fit tight, so it looks really good, like, boy, I cut that really accurately. On a foggy day, I may not be able to get my box open because the lid is expanding and the box itself is actually contracting. So I want to leave a gap in there. We're going to leave a 1/16 of an inch gap. That's one mark on your ruler. So I put my ruler up from the leg, I measure over one mark. And then I'm going to come over to this side from the leg, I'm going to measure over one mark. The ends of the box lid are going to get rounded, so I'm going to round them off just a little bit here. And there's the lid sitting in the box. Now, the last thing I need to add to my lid, the thing I haven't gone back and done yet, is make sure that I show the handle. So the handle is going to go inside this little square, rectangle. And the handle, I don't want the handle touching on the edges. If the handle fits too tightly in the little notch and it expands, it will lock the box shut. So I'm going to measure over 1 mark on the left side. I'm going to measure 1 mark on the right side. And then I can turn my ruler like that and draw that line, move it over here. And just like on the outside of the lid, there's a round over. On the handle, there's a round over. So now I have the handle, which I can see, which is drawn in solid lines. And then I have the lid itself, which I can't see, that's illustrated with dashed lines, indicating that it's behind the surface that I'm looking at. All right, so we have our lid in there. Now we have a couple more items in our box. There's a few more things in here that I need to indicate. When I shake the box, I can tell there's a bottom in it. I can hear there's stuff in there, it's not falling out. I'm gonna go ahead and draw in the bottom. And again, this would be drawn with dash lines because I can't see it from the front of the box. There's no indicator that it's there. To draw the bottom in, I'm gonna start at the bottom of this big long curve right here, at that point, and I measure up 3/8 of an inch. 3/8 of an inch is 6 marks on my ruler. Put my ruler up, measure up 3/8, put a mark. I'm going to come over to this side over here, measure up 3/8, put a mark. Turn my ruler, draw a dashed line across. Now, it's important that the dashed line does not go through the curve. It should be right at the curve or above the curve. It should not cut off the curve or go through the curve. So this is really close. This one will work pretty good. All right, now this line that I just drew makes the bottom of my box paper thin. I actually need a second line because my box bottom is about 1/8 of an inch thick. It's not a paper thin bottom. So I need to draw a line about 1/8 of an inch up from this one. The bottom material we're going to use is 1/8 inch masonite. So I'm going to measure up 1/8 of an inch here. Come down to this inch. Measure up about 1/8. Turn my ruler and draw another dashed line. And there is the bottom in the box. And it's all hidden, right? I can't see it from the front, which is why it's all drawn as a dashed line. Now the bottom extends out a little bit into this leg. So I'm going to go like this. The bottom also extends over here into this leg. So I will extend the bottom piece out a little bit into the legs. And now there are several other things that I need to draw. There's still a couple of things in the drawing that we actually need to put there that we can't see them from the front, but they are there, and we need to help the person who's going to build it understand some of the shapes and sizes by adding these pieces in. So if I look at this piece here, right, directly behind the leg is the side piece, and I need to indicate that on my drawing. Right? Also, if I take that apart, holding the side piece on is this little yellow thing right here. This little yellow thing is called a biscuit. And the biscuit, I have to show that in my drawing. I need to indicate that in the box, actually, there's 8 biscuits. So I'm going to need to draw that on here. Let's start by drawing the side piece directly behind the leg. The side piece, like the top lid, is a 1/2 inch thick. So a 1/2 inch is 8 marks on my ruler. I'm going to come up here, take my ruler. I start right here at the leg. I'm going to measure over 1/2 inch. Come down here to the bottom. Measure over 1/2 inch. I do it right about the same. I do it about the bottom of that point, bottom of the curve. Now I'm going to turn my ruler and draw a dashed line right there. That actually helps to see that it highlights the fact that the leg is actually getting bigger at the top and smaller at the, or bigger at the bottom, smaller at the top. The side piece that I'm drawing right now is the same height as the top of my box. So I'm simply going to extend the top over a little bit with a dashed line. And this side piece goes down and is the same height as the front piece, so it also goes down to the bottom of this curve. So I extend the curve over. I'm going to go like that. I put my ruler back at the bottom of the curve and I extend that over using a dashed line. And now there's the side piece represented just like it sits in the actual box, directly behind the leg. Now, when I take that off, I can see a couple things. First of all, I notice that the top edge up here is rounded. It comes up and rounds over and goes back down. And this bottom edge down here that's curved is rounded as well. So I can round that on my drawing here. I draw in a radius, and I can go back and erase the parts. Now, I also notice right here in the center is the biscuit. So I need to draw the notch where the biscuit is going to slide in. The biscuit is in the center of this side piece. So the side piece is a 1/2 inch. 1/2 of a 1/2 is a 1/4. So I draw a light line at a 1/4 inch. Halfway should be right in the middle. And the biscuit is 1/8 of an inch thick. So that's 2/16. I put 1/16 on the left of the line, 1/16 on the right of the line. And then I'll turn my ruler this way and draw my dashed line. And the biscuit, the height of the biscuit is about 1 inch, 2.5 inches long. So it starts about the lid, it stops about the bottom. That's about the appropriate height for my biscuit. All right, so that side view is done. Now, it's hard to tell that that's a biscuit from that little slot right there. It could be a number of different things. So we want to put a second biscuit in our drawing. In our box itself, there's actually 8 biscuits in here. 2 biscuits per corner. So we're going to move over to this side of our drawing and we're going to draw in a biscuit sitting sideways. And the biscuit shape is like a football. So I'm going to draw in a biscuit right there so that I can see that this slot is for a biscuit that looks like that. All right, so I'm getting close to being done. The last little bit we need to draw into our drawing is the hinge, right? So what allows that lid to open and shut is a dowel that is drilled into the lid through the side piece right here. Now, we can't see a lot of it from this view, but we do need to indicate what it would look like. And we do that obviously with hidden lines because we can't see it from this view. So the dowel hinge is going to be in the middle of the lid. So the lid is a 1/2 inch thick, a quarter is a 1/2 of a 1/2. So I'm going to measure down a 1/4 inch, put a light line right here. The dowel is 1/8 of an inch thick. That's 2/16. So I'm going to put 1/16 above this line, 1/16 below that line. Like that. And then I'm going to turn my ruler and extend those lines out using a dashed line. Now I can see the dowel as a little dot on the side of the box, which means I need to draw my dashed line all the way out to the very edge of the side piece. Not the leg, but the side piece. And I do that with a bunch of dashed lines. So there's my dowel, and now I'll usually sand a little bit of a point on the end of the dowel just to help it as it slides into the lid. So I'm just going to draw a little bit of a point on it. Now, last thing, if we look at our box, what we notice in here are some washers. There's a washer on each side, and that holds the space of the lid. The lid is supposed to be a 1/16 of an inch smaller than the box all the way around. We don't want that lid sliding back and forth. So when we leave a 1/16 of an inch space, we have to fill it with something, and we fill it with a washer. So I'm going to draw my washer in. Again, it's hard to see this, but I have to do it with a dashed line. And so let's draw that in. So here's the washer. Right, so there's my washer. Hard to see from this view, it's hard to tell what it is, but we want to indicate that in there we're going to put a washer to hold the spacing of our lid. So here's our box. This is the full drawing of the front view and all the hidden parts that are in the front view. And now what we need to do is we need to add to it our dimensions, and then these pieces, we would be part of the way towards having all the dimensions necessary to cut the box out. So let's add our dimensions to this. I'm going to do that using what are called extension lines. So we learned about that in our tool or our shop talk. Extension lines extend away from the object, but they don't touch the object. Extension lines extend away from the object, but they don't touch the object. So an extension line would look like that. Right? So they extend away from the object, but they don't touch it. Extension lines then are connected with dimension lines. Dimension lines have arrows on each end, and then the dimension lines are associated with a number, a dimension. So our box is 8 inches in its width. So there's my extension lines, my dimension lines. Now, for an A on your project, it's important that your arrows touch the extension line. If your arrows stop short, you'll get no better than a C. Your score will go automatically to a C. You can't stop short because the dimension, the 8 inches, is associated with arrow tip to arrow tip. So if you stop your arrow tip short, technically what that means is there's still more dimension in here that you aren't accounting for. And if I was making the project, I would need to call you and say, hey, how much dimension is from the arrow tip over here to that line, the extension line? And you'd say, oh, well, I was just lazy, I didn't draw it all the way. Ah, I wish you'd told me, I wouldn't have had to get you out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you want an A on the project, just make sure you don't do that. Draw your extension lines out, draw your arrow, your dimension lines all the way, and make sure your arrow touches the extension line. I also have a center line right there. That was at 4 inches. Right, those are the two little marks that look like quote marks. That means inches in math. So we need to put 4 inches. It's 4 inches to the center line where we put the notch. I'm going to extend a line out from the leg at the top. I'm going to extend a line out from the leg at the bottom, 3 7/8 of an inch. I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to extend a line up from the top of the leg. I'm going to add another arrow, an extension or dimension line here, and I'm going to write in the dimension of the top of the leg. The top of the leg is 5/8 of an inch. Five-eighths of an inch. Now I'm going to come down here to the bottom of the leg, and I'm going to do the same thing. Bottom of the leg, as we learned when we draw it, is 1/8 of an inch bigger than the top of the leg. If the top of the leg is 5/8, the bottom of the leg is 6/8. 6/8 is also known as 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to write in 3/4 of an inch. Put in my arrows. Now I have the dimensions needed to make my leg. The top corner of our legs was rounded, so I'm going to add that dimension. That's a 1/8 inch radius, 1/8 inch R. R in math stands for radius when you put it by a number. So we'll go like this. And 1/8 inch radius. All right, so now the other thing I need to do here is I need to add in some text. I'm going to add information like numbers so I can go cut it, but I also need to add in some text. Now text is really important in a drawing because I need to read it. And if you do cursive or you do really sloppy handwriting, the people that are going to be looking at the plans trying to figure out what to build aren't going to be able to read it. So in drafting, long time ago, everybody got together around the world and said, when you draw out letters in drafting, you need to use capital block letters. Capital block letters. An E looks like an E. If we all do a capital block, we will all recognize the E. Right? So for an A on your project, to get an A on your project, you have to write all your words on your drawings with capital block letters. All right, so capital block letter, let's do something. So we're gonna put our arrow with a little tail on it here, and this is a number 10 biscuit. Number 10 biscuit, so that would look like this. Okay, so there has to be capital block letters, right? If you make small letters, if you use cursive, you will at best get a C on your drawing, right? So you need to get the A, you have to use capital block letters. All right, so we have another few things we need to add in that have a lot of writing in it. Okay, so we have two things. We have a curve. We have to tell the people building this about the curve and how to make it. And we also have to tell them, what is this dashed line? What does that represent? So I put my arrow. The dashed line is the bottom of our box. That represents 1/8 of an inch thick masonite. Masonite is a plywood type material. It's a man-made material that is inexpensive, resists some mold and mildew, stuff like that, but it's very tough and it makes for a good bottom material. Capital block letters, 1/8 inch masonite. Right, here's the arrow to my curve. Here I have a curve, and what we did is we built this, we drew it with a template. And so when we send our plans somewhere to have them built, we're going to go ahead and send a template with it so that they don't have to figure out how to make the radius. So I'm just going to write C template. And that person who's going to build it, they're going to see that and they're going to say, oh, somewhere in this package of plans and information that I'm getting, I should find a template that I'm going to need to use for this bottom curve, right? So they'll know what to do with that. Now we need to indicate where the bottom is located. How do we locate the bottom? We started at this corner right here and we measured up 3/8 of an inch. So we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to extend an extension line out from that. Then we're going to come up to the bottom of the box and we're going to extend an extension line out from that. We'll put an arrow, and this was 3/8 of an inch. Now we have a couple other things that we can add. We need to know how thick is the side right here. How thick is the lid? We haven't told anybody that. So we're going to put that in here. And to do that, I'm just going to pick an open spot and put opposing arrows. They need to be directly across from each other. Then I draw my tail out and I'm going to say 1/2 inch. So now we know that the lid is 1/2 of an inch thick. And we'll do the same thing over here with the side piece. 1/2 inch. We also need to know, right, how tall is this side piece, and really how tall is the front piece. We've talked about how long it is in length, but we haven't talked about how tall it is. So I'm going to extend the top of the box out like that with an extension line. I'll line an arrow up with this arrow down here. And the front, back, side, they are all 3 inches tall. We probably ought to put some indication of how big the notch is. I'll put 2 arrows. And our notch was 2 inches. We want a handle that's close to 2 inches wide. So we'll put 2 inches in there so they know how big to make the notch. We're gonna give them some information about the handle later on another drawing. So I'm not gonna tell them how wide the handle is here. On our top view, we'll have more space and we'll add that in. The last thing I want to indicate on here is I need to tell them about the dowel that's holding the lid on and the washer that fills the space. So I'm gonna draw 2 extension lines. One from the washer, one from the dowel, and I'm going to add the little tail onto it. Put my arrow on there. And this is where it starts to get kind of crowded here, so just keep your pencil sharp. This is a number 6 washer. Again, capital block letters. And this is a 1/8 inch dowel. The last little piece that I'm going to draw in is I need to indicate that this little groove, this little slot that's in here, is centered in the piece. So we have a center line. That's drawn in there. So I'm going to take an arrow like that. From the edge of the side piece to the center line where the slot is cut is 1/4 of an inch. It was half of the distance. It was half of the thickness of this little piece. So that would half of a half is a quarter. So right here I'm going to put 1/4 inch, and that allows them to be able to find the center mark and know that that slot goes in the center. All right, so there's all the dimensions that we can put on this particular part of the drawing. One thing I am going to add to it is, in the case of this 1/8 inch radius, in the case of the biscuits, and in the case of the dowel and the washer, one thing I can add is the abbreviation TYP. TYP stands for typical. So I'm going to come up to my dimension here, and right after 1/8 of an inch radius, in parentheses, I'm going to put TYP. I'm going to do the same thing over here for the dowel and the washer. And I'm going to do the same thing right here for biscuit. TYP in parentheses stands for typical, and that means that anytime you see this little roundover on the drawing, put a 1/8 inch radius there. Now, let's count how many times do we see this little radius on the drawing. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I would have to write 1/8 inch radius 12 times across this drawing if I didn't use the word typical, right? Because anytime I have a shape or something different, I need to explain what I did there. By putting the word typical in parentheses at the end of 1/8 of an inch radius, it just means every time you see this radius, do this thing right here. Do 1/8 inch radius. That's the typical way we're going to handle it. Same thing here, number 10 biscuit. There's a lot of biscuits in the box. This just means I'm going to draw it this one time. Anytime you see the need for a biscuit, handle it like this. Put a number 10 biscuit there, right? There's 2 washers, there's 2 dowels. We're only going to draw them on there once. We're not going to draw them down at this end, so we're just going to say, wherever you need another washer and another dowel, handle it like this. And so we don't have to keep drawing these things in there. All right, our drawing is done, and we're ready to move on to, this is the front view. All right, that's the front of my Craftsman box. Now we're ready to go on and draw the side and the top. That'll give us our 3 views needed for a working drawing, and we'll be ready to actually start building the box itself.